So there's been new light shone on the Ruby Franke 8 passengers situation, where we've had not one but two sisters of Ruby Franke come out and shed light on what kind of person they are, but also the deep web of lies, deceit and manipulation that Ruby Franke has done to people around her. And this has been seen threaded throughout her entire YouTube channel. I'm going to show you all this and more, but quick, a 20-second recap on what's going on. On a late August morning in Utah, a 12-year-old boy covered in loads of injuries knocked at the door of a neighbour's house asking for food and water. He had escaped a nearby home moments before by climbing out a window and running away with duct tape still to his ankles. The child was then taken to hospital due to these injuries. 5 other children were found in the same house, and Ruby Franke, the mother of these kids, was then duly arrested and taken for questioning. She's now being charged with 6 counts and her pre-trial is next month. Her parenting has been questioned in the past, and I mean it's quite obvious if you look at the kind of circumstances that we find ourselves in. And I mean if you just go on a YouTube channel you can see these sort of nasty and evil things that she did to her children, such as rebuking the right to eat so that they can learn how to live responsibly. And I mean from the sounds of everything that's going on, she's a nasty piece of work. So she was arrested, and from this arrest there's been multiple people that have come out to try and tell their side of the story of the situation because of the severity of it. And there's also a lot of extra stories coming out about Ruby Franke. The latest I've seen is an article that came out yesterday about Ruby Franke calling the police twice in 2020 for harassment on her YouTube videos, which to me really shows the protective and manipulative nature that she has. And I mean, what really is she trying to achieve by calling the police over a couple of comments on YouTube, apart from potentially just trying to embrace her power that she thinks she has? I've also seen quite a few newer articles which I'll show later, but most notably I've seen her 2 sisters, Julie and Bonnie, both release videos on their YouTube channel in the past week coming out basically rebuking her. And they've probably done this because, just to mention, both Julie and Bonnie, they both have YouTube channels with quite a large amount of following, to focus on a similar family orientated type of thing on their channels. So they kind of had to come out considering their sister and what she's done, and at least tell their side of the story so they don't get any backlash. Firstly, we're going to look at the response from Julie.
3 years ago, Ruby, everything was great. It seemed to be fine anyway. We were a typical family. She was getting some therapy counseling because their family needed it, which I think is great. However, I think you need to get it from a great source. Read the reviews. Jody Hildebrandt and her website or therapy style, I don't know what you want to call it, connections, was not a great resource.
So it seems there was failed counselling due to a bad practitioner, and I mean it's not out the realm of possibilities at all.
We all felt weird about this Jody lady. We weren't comfortable with it. We didn't like it. We didn't like the teachings Ruby was bringing to the family functions, and we were this close to telling her, if you come to our family events anymore, we do not want to hear what you were learning through connections because we don't like it.
It's very evident that they needed help, and maybe her head was just tapped or she chose out of impulse, but obviously it's not turned out very well.
She did call my mom and yelled at my mom on the phone for 45 minutes and accused her of things that were not true. It was almost as if Ruby had been making up memories from her childhood. She was trying to grab at anything she could, and she would exaggerate on everything. So she started all of her lies back then, lying to everyone.
But as stated, the over-excessive lying kind of just shows the kind of character that Ruby Franke is.
I literally had no contact with her. She wouldn't respond to any texts or emails over the time that I tried reaching out to her. Never got a response from her. So we are in complete shock still as to what she had done, because we had no idea of what was happening. Basically, I'm here to say that I had no idea what was happening.
So it turns out for about 3 years there has been a total loss of contact between Ruby Franke and Julie. And to me it just makes it feel sad, because Julie doesn't even really know this person that's done these heinous crimes. So for her to come out and just denounce it, obviously she's going to denounce it, but it just looks bad, and it's really sad to see. And also just to mention that if you do have something dark and something to hide, people tend to go very quiet and isolated in those periods. Exactly what Ruby Franke has done here. They have absolutely nothing to do with each other at all. But as I stated, it is a potential PR disaster, and they need to kind of scrub their image clean from this.
We have our platforms where we try and bring brightness and positivity into other people's lives, and that is why we didn't talk about Ruby in our content for the past 3 years. Yeah, we try and show the highs and lows of everyday family and parenting, but Ruby's topic was not supposed to be part of that content. And it was none of your business. It was nothing that we needed to talk about. And I wasn't sure if her kids were maybe still watching these videos, and I didn't want to be not tactful and slander their mom and then have them watch those videos.
The last thing they want to do is seem complicit in something that is so horrible and degrading, especially when they both run somewhat family channels. So from this video, I really got that it's just very sad. There's a lot of broken relationships and broken people, all caused from Ruby Franke's horrible outbursts. I'm sure a lot of people out there have their own experiences with isolated family members that just sort of are off the grid. And obviously, if that's happened for a certain amount of time, no one's going to really go back to it and check that everything's okay. It's just going to let people be themselves to themselves. And as she states, she's been getting some hate for it, and it's just not fair. Like, it's such a shame that the media and people try to turn it on her. It's not her fault at all. And before I show you Bonnie, the other sister's response, I found an article that came out yesterday that really does shine a light on the character of Ruby Franke. Former cellmate of Ruby Franke said that she got special treatment in jail. The guards really catered for her. And I mean, considering what she's in for, I find this so hard to believe. So we have Deborah Monson, who was in a cell for the first few days with Ruby, has stated that she got preferential treatment while she was there in multiple ways. And the police have rebuked this, but at the same time, the police have never lied. So Deborah said that she kept getting out the cell and going up and talking to the guys at the desk. And generally this sounds like a non-issue, but you're in a prison cell. Like, you shouldn't be free roaming all the time in a cell. Like, that's not how prison works. And she also said Ruby Franke seemed to have more privileges. She said that Ruby requested a pen at one point because she wanted to write a letter to the judge before a court hearing, which was advised by her lawyer, but she was told that she had to wait. And then apparently a short time later, she came back with the pen in her hand and was being very secretive about it, saying that not to tell anyone. And it sounds silly at first, just a pen. Like, a pen doesn't really sound like much, right? But it's the fact that she's in prison with an object with a sharp edge. Considering the fact that she's been locked up for crimes which are violent, it makes absolutely no sense why she'd be allowed anything like that, secretively or not secretively. She's already known as an unstable character, so like, what if she gets angry? What if she acts out? Like, are you just going to find out? Once again, it shows that she wants to try and manipulate herself to get as much power as she can, even in the confines of a prison cell. Seems like she likes to have power over people in what way she can. Like, obviously with her children, it's total power and control over them to teach them a lesson. Always something very, very small, like just being able to have a pen that you've already been told you can't have. It's just that power imbalance. She just wants to be able to have whatever she wants at any cost. And even though she's in prison, she's still trying it. And slightly before Julie's response, Bonnie, who's another sister of Ruby Franke, came out in a video where she was clearly distressed, trying to exonerate herself as well.
I spent the first week in complete shock, where I felt my body and my mind and my emotions were completely paralyzed because of the just absolute shock of all of this. The more I learn, my feelings are turning more to anger. I am mad. I am mad.
Well, I mean, it is totally understandable to be mad at the situation, and you can clearly see it on her face and with what she says in the full video. I'll link it below so you can have a look at it for yourself. I mean, it is totally understandable to feel let down about the entire situation. It's damaged so many people and done so much harm to the family and people around. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's the children as well that are really going to be struggling with this.
Something that I pride myself on, something that I enjoy doing, is being transparent. And I cannot be fully transparent with certain aspects of this. And if you don't understand that, then you don't understand how the system works.
It's also important to note here that she stated that she can't say everything she wants to say due to the fact that the judge has said not to. Obviously, as you can see, she just wants to burst everything out, but it's just impossible for her to do. And honestly, it just makes things so much more sad that this has been a relationship which hasn't been a thing for 3 years. And it all comes to a head over one night where she finds out that there's all these problems that have been happening with the children. She just thought that the children were being somewhat strictly abided to by Ruby Franke, but obviously it's a lot worse than that. So not only has she lost her sister, but also there is this massive group of children which are going to be massively affected by it, which are in her family still. So it's very sad to see.
I don't agree with how extreme they are on everything. I knew they were weird. I knew that they were off. Those are the things that we kept quiet about, because what was I going to say? What was I going to do? I was not going to come out and publicly say that I don't like my sister and I don't like what she's doing and I think she's weird.
And I mean, this is a great point here. Like, you take one look at the actual channel, 8 Passengers, and it is very weird. The people within it seem weird. The children don't seem totally okay with it, obviously, as they shouldn't be.
Now, and I'll only speak for myself, but Ruby and Kevin are not where my concern lies anymore. So it is difficult to have the blame put on us when these are not the actions of us. These are not the actions that we did. And I get people wanting to put blame somewhere. I do. They want to blame someone. There's only one person that could have helped, and he didn't.
And it also makes total sense that they've stayed away from these people, considering everything before. And it's just horrible that this has happened not as a result of it, but this has happened while not under their watch. Because I'm sure that if she was still in contact with all her family, such as her mum, this would have never happened. And it's not fair in the slightest for either Bonnie or Julie that this has happened. I mean, the only reason that these two had to respond is because they have public YouTube channels with the similar type of videos. So obviously you're going to be tarnished by your sister with the same name. And like, it's so unfair that this has happened because, like we've said, they haven't even had a contact with them. It's just a very unfortunate circumstance. So both Julie and Bonnie's videos are quite similar, and I do think that's because of the lawyer restraint and the judge saying you can say this, you can't say that. So it's relatively broad, but there's still a lot that can come out in the future. They have been cut off for a while, so there's no need to be chasing these two, but at the same time, it's clear that they've been cut off for a while, so there's no need to be chasing these two. It's not their fault at all. And some people might say, well, I check on my family all the time. I'm sure that there's at least one person here that has these kind of relationships with family where they don't really speak to the person or haven't spoken to the person for years. Like, it's not very easy that something like this can happen, but it's very easy that family contact can get lost. And you really don't want to speak to the person, especially if they are like Ruby Franke. The pre-trial starts on the 17th of October, and it could potentially be a closed court, which means that there will be no public hearings. Nobody will be able to see anything. They might get a review at the end of the day, but basically we can't see what's gone on. And this is to protect the children as requested by the children, which to me makes perfect sense because obviously they've grown up on this channel. There are so many videos of them in the public. And for the public to find out all these little nitty-gritty details about the sort of problems and issues that they've had with their mum and potentially their dad in the past, which has caused these sort of persistent issues, it makes total sense that they don't want that stained on their record, especially considering that you could probably Google all of the kids' names and they'll show up. But I guess the judge will have to decide on that because it is such a public case. It might have to be public. And yeah, from everything that I've heard here, I would say that Ruby Franke is like a manipulative liar that always wants to get their own way and has a big problem with trying to get as much power as possible in her hands. Obviously, you will understand that this was more of a serious video. I'm also sure there will be more information coming out in between now and the pre-trial, so I will keep all of you in the loop for that. But I hope you found this video interesting, and take care.